What if I told you that one of the most powerful men in the world, a man worth over $100 billion, just got stopped in his tracks? Not by another billionaire, not by a government in Washington, but by a small African nation that said, enough. This is not fiction. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is reality. Burkina Faso, a landlocked country in West Africa, has just stunned the world. They suspended a malaria project backed by none other than Bill Gates himself, a project that was releasing genetically modified mosquitoes into the environment. Let that sink in for a moment. Genetically engineered mosquitoes designed to change nature itself, halted by a country that has endured decades of poverty, coups, and foreign meddling, but still had the courage to stand up and say no. And the reasons? They are as chilling as they are powerful. The government of Burkina Faso declared it was deeply concerned about the safety of its people, concerned about the unknown risks, concerned about the environmental impact that no one could fully predict. And they were not alone. Communities across the nation were already whispering in fear, whispering questions that no one in the global health elite seemed willing to answer. What happens when you release genetically modified insects into the wild? What happens if the mosquitoes don't behave the way the scientists expect? What if nature fights back in ways no one can control? Burkina Faso's leaders listened, and instead of bowing to global pressure, they did something shocking. They pressed pause. This is not just a story about mosquitoes. This is a story about power, trust, and the battle between science, sovereignty, and survival. For decades, malaria has been one of Africa's deadliest enemies. Every year, it kills hundreds of thousands, most of them children. Families live with fear, watching loved ones burn with fevers that often end in death. So when international organizations promised a solution, when scientists backed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation proposed releasing genetically modified mosquitoes designed to wipe out malaria, it sounded like hope. It sounded like salvation. But salvation always comes with a price. The modified mosquitoes were engineered to spread a gene that could suppress or even eliminate entire populations of malaria-carrying insects. On paper, it was brilliant. In practice, it was terrifying. Because what happens when humans start rewriting the laws of nature? What happens when entire species are manipulated, altered, or destroyed? And who gets to decide if that risk is worth it? For Burkina Faso, the answer was clear. The government stepped in and suspended the project, citing not just safety concerns, but also the lack of transparency and accountability. This wasn't just about science. It was about sovereignty.
For too long, African nations have been treated as laboratories, testing grounds for experiments that wealthier nations would never dare to attempt on their own soil. From drug trials to chemical tests, history is filled with stories of Africa being used as a playground for global elites. But now, Burkina Faso is saying no, and their defiance is sending shockwaves across the globe. Think about this. Bill Gates, one of the most influential figures in global health, has poured billions into fighting malaria. He has funded vaccines, drugs, and mosquito control strategies. But the genetically modified mosquito project was the boldest, most controversial move yet. Supporters hailed it as revolutionary. Critics warned it was reckless. And now, Burkina Faso has given the world its answer. They are not willing to gamble with their people's lives. The backlash from communities was real. Villagers were asking, who gave consent? Who decided this was safe? Who gets to say that altering nature itself is the solution to Africa's problems? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, what if the cure becomes worse than the disease? Imagine for a moment a scenario where these genetically modified mosquitoes create unintended consequences. What if they disrupt the delicate balance of ecosystems? What if they open the door for even deadlier diseases to spread? What if the genetic changes leap beyond mosquitoes and affect other species in ways no one foresaw? Science can model, science can predict, but nature always has the final say. Burkina Faso's decision is not just a rejection of the project. It is a bold statement to the world. Africa will no longer be a testing ground. This decision exposes a much deeper conflict, the conflict between global health agendas and local sovereignty. For years, projects like these have been sold to African nations with promises of progress, promises of salvation, promises of hope. But behind the promises, there is always power, and power comes with control. By suspending this project, Burkina Faso has sent a message. Control belongs to the people, not to foreign billionaires, no matter how well-intentioned they claim to be. And make no mistake, this is not just about Burkina Faso. Other African nations are watching closely, because if Burkina Faso can stand up to Bill Gates, then perhaps others can too. This is a turning point, a moment when African nations can choose whether they want to lead their own future or continue to be shaped by outside forces. But here's the dark reality. Suspending the project does not erase the danger. The mosquitoes already released may continue to spread. The genes already engineered may keep working in ways no one can predict. The question is whether this pause came too late. Burkina Faso's defiance has raised the stakes, and now the world is divided. Some say the nation is reckless for rejecting a tool that could save millions of lives. Others argue it is the bravest move any government has made in years, putting people above experiments, sovereignty above science, and humanity above ambition. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This story is not just about malaria. It's about trust. Do the people trust global health organizations? Do they trust billionaires who promise solutions? Do they trust the scientists who say, "Don't worry, it's safe"? In Burkina Faso, the answer is clear. The trust is broken. And when trust is broken, even the most promising solution becomes a threat. This is why the suspension matters so much, because it's not just about science. It's about dignity. It's about choice. It's about who gets to decide what happens on African soil. As this story unfolds, the tension is only growing. Will Burkina Faso face backlash from international donors? Will the suspension spark a wider African movement against foreign health experiments? Or will the pressure become too much, forcing the government to reverse its decision? No one knows yet, but one thing is certain. The world has just witnessed something extraordinary. A small, struggling nation stood up to one of the most powerful men on the planet and won, at least for now. And that victory is bigger than mosquitoes. It's bigger than malaria. It's a declaration of independence in a world where true independence is rare. Burkina Faso may be small, but today it has become a giant that has reminded the world of a simple truth. No matter how much money or power you have, you cannot silence the will of a people who refuse to be experimented on. This fight is not over. It is only beginning. And the question now is this: will the world respect Burkina Faso's stand, or will they punish them for daring to defy the powerful? Because in the end, this story is more than mosquitoes. It's about who controls the future of humanity. And right now, that future hangs in the balance. But what if this is only the beginning? What if Burkina Faso's decision sparks a chain reaction across Africa? A movement where nations no longer accept being the test subjects of global experiments. Because here's the truth the world doesn't want to admit. Africa has been here before. From medical experiments during colonial times to vaccine trials that raised suspicions, to foreign-backed projects that collapsed and left scars, the continent has a long memory, and that memory is not one of trust. This is why the suspension of the genetically modified mosquito project matters so much. It is not just science under review. It is history, justice, and sovereignty colliding in the present. Imagine the conversations happening now in capitals across Africa. Leaders asking themselves, if Burkina Faso can say no, why can't we? Communities whispering, if they paused the project, maybe we were right to be afraid. And citizens realizing our lives are not bargaining chips in someone else's laboratory. The Gates-backed Mosquito project was meant to be a symbol of hope, but today it has become a symbol of defiance. A reminder that power, no matter how vast, cannot silence the will of a people determined to protect themselves. And yet, the stakes remain terrifyingly high. Malaria is still out there. It is still killing. It is still destroying families every single day. So the world is caught in a deadly paradox. Do we fight malaria with radical solutions that risk altering nature forever? Or do we hold back, protecting ecosystems but allowing the disease to continue its devastating toll? This is not just a scientific question. It's an ethical one, a moral one, a question that forces us to ask, who decides the value of a life? Who gets to gamble with humanity's future? Burkina Faso has made its choice, but the debate is far from over. In the coming months, the pressure will grow. Global institutions will push harder, donors will tighten their grip, and the fight between sovereignty and science will become even more explosive. Because at its core, this is not about mosquitoes. It's about who controls the rules of survival. And the answer to that question may shape the destiny of Africa, and perhaps the destiny of us all.